We got breaking news in the CBS Sports HQ this morning with the Minnesota Vikings nearing a deal to acquire their Adam Thielen from the Carolina Panthers. They have acquired him. That's the latest from our NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. A 35-year-old Thielen spent the first 9 years there in the Twin Cities with Minnesota, where he was a two-time Pro Bowler. He'll add some depth, though, when it comes back to his old stomping grounds in that receiver room. With Jordan Addison suspended, will miss the first 3 games. Justin Jefferson has been banged up, along with others there to start the year. And take a look at it. Most seasons with 100-plus receptions, I'd say, in Vikings history. He has one of those, and up there with some of those greats that we have seen in the purple and gold. I want to bring in our NFL insider, Jonathan Jones, and your reaction here. Of course, we talked about this the past couple of days, that this might be an option for the Vikings, but now bringing a familiar face, how does this help them the start of the season?
It's huge, right? Because they have who is ostensibly a rookie in J.J. McCarthy at quarterback, someone that Adam Thielen has gotten to know ever since J.J. McCarthy was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. You know, I actually had an opportunity to speak with Adam Thielen back during Super Bowl week. He spoke very, very highly of the Carolina Panthers, of Bryce Young, and he had obviously spent the last 2 years there with Carolina, being their leading receiver in both 2023 and 2024. But there's always that pull, right, back home. And Adam Thielen from Minnesota spent, as you noted, the better part of a decade there making his name. And so now, look, you can always go back home. And the Carolina Panthers, they are in a much different position with their wide receiver group today than they were last year or 2 years ago. And so while they absolutely needed Adam Thielen's veteran presence within that locker room, certainly when Bryce Young was a rookie and into his second year, they're feeling a lot more comfortable about things now. And so we have been talking the last couple of days, really probably more than a week, that Adam Thielen could return to the Minnesota Vikings. You know, yesterday, right before roster cuts, there was a little bit of a fever pitch. It didn't get done. It didn't have to get done because it was more of a soft deadline than a hard deadline. And so now the two sides finally working out the trade terms that essentially boil down to a future 4th-round selection going to Carolina in exchange for sending Adam Thielen to Minnesota. The Vikings will work out Adam Thielen's contract, sort of revise it there, and that is the deal between the two teams.
So looking at it, of course, here are the details you just mentioned there. The Panthers receiving, as you said, that conditional 2026 7th-round pick along with that 5th-rounder in 2027. And, of course, the Vikings getting their guy in Adam Thielen. For Thielen, though, J.J., this is the second turnaround, I guess you can say, in terms of working with a young quarterback. We saw that Bryce Young. It didn't quite work out that way. Why might this situation with J.J. McCarthy, of course, going back, be different?
I don't know that it will necessarily be different. It'll be helpful, right? I mean, Bryce Young needed that veteran, that route runner in Adam Thielen. Again, he had 1,000 receiving yards in 2023. Everyone on the wide receiver group, no one really stood out last year for the Carolina Panthers, yet Thielen still led the team in receiving yards last year. And so you have J.J. McCarthy again. There's going to be that immediate camaraderie and bond. Now they have to work at it on the field more than they had, you know, in summer workouts and kind of backyard football, if you will. The Vikings, of course, have aspirations for NFC championships and for Super Bowls, right? I mean, they were able to get those double-digit wins last year with Sam Darnold under center. They're hoping that nothing really changes, that they can reclaim that mantle, if you will, there in the NFC North, of course, going up against the Packers, the Lions, and the Bears. And then you consider this is probably a Vikings team that should be led by its defense, right? I mean, Brian Flores' defense could very well be the top-ranked defense in the NFL this upcoming season. So with Justin Jefferson, who many would argue is the best wide receiver in the NFL, though he's battling injury, you always need someone else. You have Jordan Addison, who is out for the first 3 games of the season due to a suspension that the NFL handed down a few weeks ago. Now you add in Adam Thielen, a sure-handed veteran guy, locker room presence, familiar face, all of those things that can help the Vikings.
We'll see how that pans out there for J.J. McCarthy, the crew, and now Adam Thielen.
Back here on HQ Spotlight, where the NFC North is arguably the toughest division in football right now, with every team eyeing the division title. Here's a look at what the squads were able to do in the preseason. Now, take all this a grain of salt, right? It's just, why exactly, Pete? You know, the Lions reign supreme, of course, as back-to-back division champs and have the most complete roster right now. Packers remain strong contenders with the second best odds to win the division. The Vikings face questions after a big quarterback change in the Bears, led by new head coach Ben Johnson, still seen as long shots at this point in time. For more on some of the biggest questions, though, entering this 2025 season for the NFC North, we welcome Pete Prisco and Kyle Long back to the show. Let's go ahead and begin with those Detroit Lions, who have the best odds right now, Pete. However, a team right now who will be really under a crazy microscope with not one, but two new coordinators.
Yeah, that's going to be tough to handle.
Yeah.
And you can hear great things about both of them, John Morton and Kelvin Shepard, but the reality is you're replacing two really good football coaches in Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. And there's always going to be a transition. And how do you handle the transition? Last year, Aaron Glenn was put in a tough spot because his players all got hurt, including Aiden Hutchinson. Well, it's going to be a lot easier for Shepard now because he has Aiden Hutchinson back healthy again. So it'll make the transition a little bit better. But again, anytime you make the changes, and John Morton is familiar with Dan Campbell, he's worked with him before, but anytime you make changes, it's going to be tough to handle. So I'm curious to see how they move forward with those two guys.
They asked John Morton what kind of offense he's going to run in Detroit, and he said, whatever Dan Campbell wants to run. And that tells me exactly what I need to know about this team. And that's really the biggest question mark I have about the Detroit Lions. Is their culture strong enough to overcome the departure of those two coordinators? I've been on teams with good coordinators that had a bad culture, and we didn't win many games. And I've been on teams that are less than in terms of talent that have great cultures, and boy, oh boy, we couldn't wait to punch you in the mouth on Sunday. And I feel like that's what the Lions have, and that's the big question. How much can that culture impact success this season?
By the way, John Morton, 1995, when I was covering the Jaguars, he was a wide receiver on that team. He got cut, but he was a wide receiver. White Lightning.
White Lightning.
Really?
That's what his name was.
I love that.
We used to drink White Lightning.
Oh, yeah? Okay. What would you do if Amon-Ra St. Brown was on your team?
If Amon-Ra St. Brown was on my team, I'd find a way to get that guy the ball at least 4 times in the first 15 plays. So the other defense is just like, I'm so tired of dealing with it.
Jamison Williams has taken a big step forward
This is true.
as well.
This is true, but both players obviously adding to the culture there. Switching gears here to the Vikings, okay? Just one game away from the number one seed in the NFC last year, but a quarterback change has a lot of people doubting things right now. Are you one of those people, Pete?
I have concerns. I have to see it. Look, it's a great situation for any quarterback. Kevin O'Connell is a great coach and a great offensive mind. The offensive line is better. They've improved. They went out and spent money. Ryan Kelly's now the center. He's a little up in the years. You got Darisaw coming back from his injury. The line should be better. You got, Justin Jefferson. They can run the ball. It's a great situation for J.J. McCarthy. But can he handle it? And what do you expect from him right away? You heard things during training camp that his accuracy was off at times. He wasn't as good as they expected him to be. So we'll see. But I think anytime you replace a quarterback, there's always going to be a lot of eyes on you, and it's going to be interesting to see how he handles himself.
I'll say this about J.J. McCarthy. Every single time that young man takes the field for the Minnesota Vikings, the game will slow down just a bit. My question for the Minnesota Vikings is, how quickly will the game slow down for J.J. McCarthy? Because he's going to have the answers to the test. You alluded to his coordinator, his head coach is brilliant. Obviously, he's got extremely talented guys like Jefferson and Addison, both of which are question marks right now and are going to miss some time probably. J.J. McCarthy's going to have to learn on the fly, and it's going to be trial under fire. Do the Minnesota Vikings have a roster strong enough to overcome that? And I think they do. Defensively, they play really well. They've got a chaotic identity defensively. You never know where it's going to hit you from. And then you spoke to the offensive line. So if it does go haywire week 1, Kevin O'Connell can lean on that run game. He can lean on cutting the field in half, making things easy looking for J.J. McCarthy, easier than they would be.
Chaotic identity and chaotic schedule in 2025, and it all begins week 1 against the Chicago Bears, Monday Night Football, prime time. Let's go ahead and get to those Bears. Kyle, floor is yours. The biggest question mark entering the 2025 season for Chicago.
I mean, everybody's going to talk about Caleb Williams. I'm not going to talk about Caleb Williams. I'm going to talk about the front seven. Okay, in order for Caleb Williams to get the football back and the score to remain the same, you have to stop a opposing offenses. And if you watch the Kansas City Chiefs absolutely dismantle this defense the other night, you have some concerns as well, especially as a Bears fan. Look, they've invested in guys like Dayo Adengbo. They need him to be able to come along and get home. Grady Jarrett, a veteran presence on the inside. You're going to need this group to find a way to manufacture some pressure, because the other night, Patrick Mahomes was back there baking a cake. And it was the coming out party for the Kansas City Chiefs offense, and it was the comeback down to reality for the Chicago Bears as a football team. So defensively, you got to get after the quarterback, and offensively, pre-snap penalties, okay? That is the quickest way to get yourself in the basement in the NFC North.
And for me, it's all about Caleb Williams. I mean, look, he did some good things last year, did a lot of bad things, but there were reasons for it. I thought the system didn't fit him. I think the offensive line had major problems. They've upgraded on the offensive line. There's no excuses for him right now. He's got a brilliant offensive mind in Ben Johnson, who's running things now. He's got good receivers. There is no reason at all for him not to succeed. If he doesn't, if he struggles, major red flag for the Bears, and they're going to be sitting there questioning whether they should have taken Jaden Daniels or not. Because I think they're going to get to that if he doesn't play that well.
You mentioned some highs and lows for him last season in terms of numbers. Before training camp, actually, Williams said that one of his goals is being the first 4,000-yard passer in Bears history.
It's amazing that they've never had one.
It is kind of crazy. Do you think that comes true this year?
I do.
Wow.
I think Caleb Williams throws for 4,000 yards this year.
I do too.
Okay.
I think he gets
that.
better every time, just like the J.J. McCarthy conversation. And I think that the biggest red flags we see from last year, holding on to the ball too long, not playing within the rhythm of the offense, I think those slowly start to make their way out of his system.
Drifting out of the pocket for 22 yards before you throw a pass.
That would help too. Not
Just a few things to know. Lastly here, let's get to the Packers, who are always a threat, always in the division, have the second best odds right now to win it this year. What's your biggest question for them?
Pass rush. And talking to them when I was there a couple weeks ago, and talking to Matt LaFleur and others in the organization, pass rush is one of their priorities. Rashad Gary needs to be better. He's paid a lot of money. He needs to be better. Lucas Van Ness, it looks like the pilot light went on because he was a no-show last year and he was great during training camp. So maybe they get the pressure from those two edge guys that they really need to get. Kenny Clark is healthy. He wasn't healthy last year. So I think add that all up, and I think they should be better rushing the passer, and they have to be better rushing the passer.
Rashawn Gary is the biggest puzzling piece of that defense because he's such a physical specimen. And I was still in the league when he first got in the league, and even as a rookie, he didn't know what the heck he was doing. But one thing was clear: he could get off the ball, and boy, oh boy, was he strong. If he can find a way to pair some of this stuff, run some of these games with Lucas Van Ness, they're going to have a lot of problems to present to defenses or offenses.
One quick thing about
Kenny
him,
Clark's health is huge.
Yeah, big. One quick thing about Gary, he's one of the most chipped defensive ends in the league last year. So they need to get something from Van Ness on the other side. So maybe they start chipping on that side once in a while. Because when you're unbalanced, you know that as an offensive lineman, everything goes to that side.
You got to pick one.
Yeah. Well, that's easy to pick one.
Guys, great stuff. Incredible insight as always. Pete can now go ahead and play his T-Swift because I know he's just been dying for that. It's going to be a fun division to watch. The NFC North. It all gets started week 1. Here's a look at the games on tap. Division rivals Lions and Packers going head-to-head on CBS 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time at kickoff September the 7th. And then we get the Vikings and Bears, as I mentioned, Monday Night Football, September the 8th.